Welcome to a new edition of the Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino. On this episode, we talk with founder of From the Floor to the Door, Michelle Shekhinah. She was married for many years and was a stay-at-home mom for 2 children. In 2015, she realized that her husband was addicted to drugs. In this time, she had experienced financial, emotional, and sexual abuse from him. Michelle spent many nights crying on the floor until one night she saved her life and ran for the door. Since then, she has been healing herself with therapy and other techniques. Enjoy this interview.
It's just I have to protect my anonymity. That's all.
Oh, yeah. You're fine.
So, yeah, thanks. Okay, great.
Yeah, it's great to meet you. Thank you for taking a minute out today.
Of course. Absolutely. Thank you for rescheduling.
Yeah, you bet. So before we get into your life and your work, I want to know, how did you survive COVID? That was quite a time period for all of us. How did you get through it?
Well, I'm a healthcare worker, so that was a little challenging for me. What I did as far as like mentally, how did I survive?
However that manifests itself.
Okay.
Yeah, we all had
it
hit us in every possible visceral way. Yeah.
Right. Well, I knew it was coming because in the world that I was working in, we knew things were happening. And we were kind of preparing ourselves for it. And of course, nobody knew what was going to happen next and how it would blow up. But we had a little bit of an idea. So slowly we were mentally preparing for that. And then, of course, we were the first people that they shut down. And so what I did was I hunkered down in my home. And every day when the anxiety came on, I would go outside and I walked about 4 times a day, and I started riding my bike, and I put all of that anxiety into physical fitness and tried to really stay mindful of the environment around me and the present moment, and making sure that my kids were safe and healthy, and my family also. And so I did a lot of that. Going back was actually the hardest part because I went back in the midst of it being an epidemic or a pandemic, and that was actually really scary. So, and I wrote a lot. So that's how I survived it.
So let's get to kind of the core and essence of what you do for a living. I'm going to put you in front of a bunch of 3rd grade students, and one of them looks up and says, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" How do you answer that child?
Well, I would love to answer the child fully, but again, because I need to protect my anonymity and my safety, I can't fully say, but I'm a healthcare worker, so I put on a uniform and I work with patients, and I take care of their physical, their mental, their dental health, and I make sure that they are taking care of themselves. I teach them how to do that. And I see them frequently throughout the year.
So without letting too much out, what is the exact nature of you trying to lay low and keep your, stay in an anonymous place?
Well, unfortunately, I'm still dealing with my ex-husband and more. And it's a dangerous situation for myself. It's a dangerous situation for my children. I'm learning, and because of that, as of right now, I have to keep myself a little hidden. And it's pretty sad because I shouldn't have to, but unfortunately right now I do.
I understand. So
Thank you.
Talk to me a little bit about when you were in that 10 to 12-year-old range as a kid. What did you want to be when you grew up?
I wanted to be a veterinarian.
Okay.
No question about it.
Well, and you're in a capacity of helping people now. So let's go back to where
Correct.
you were born and raised and how some of these seeds of being a caregiver and helping others got into you.
Well, I was raised by a caregiver, somebody who's also in the medical profession, whereas my father was like that. My mother supported him in the office, and we all worked in that, and they were very philanthropic, and they still are. And so I was raised where we were, our family and then the families around us were, always looking to help other people, whether it was somebody local or, around the world. and within our community or not. And so that being the mindset of what I was raised in, also naturally, I just have that in me. I just do. I just feel like I grew up with a bit of empathy that really lies deep within me.
So, for somebody that has to draw strength from a variety of sources, who has been kind of a hero for you in your life?
Who's been what? I'm sorry, I broke up a little.
Who has been a hero for you in your life?
Mm. I think one of my biggest, well, actually, my two heroes are my children. My son, especially, he's a special needs kid. I will always see him as a kid, even though he's in his 20s. He was born with some disabilities, we call it, and that kind of grew as he got older, manifested themselves differently and more severely as he got older. Because with anxiety, the anxiety feeds into it. And no matter what, though, he has really surpassed everyone's expectations. He's gone through, being bullied and having the academic issues and all of that. But in his 20s, he is very determined, and he gets up every day and he goes to work. And he's really pushed himself through a lot of emotional and physical challenge that a lot of people wouldn't. So he's definitely my superhero. And it's funny because he once said, and I had it written on his wall, there's a superhero in all of us. And he said that when he was 13. And I just think that that's so beautiful. So he's one of them. My other one is my other child, who was born with her own issues, and she's on the other side of the spectrum, but had, at 10 years old, developing really debilitating physical issues, and also pushed herself through it, and also went through bullying, and even still had more physical issues that came out as she got older, and has pushed herself through all of the emotional stuff that she went through and the physical stuff that she went through. So, but other than that, Tina Turner is like it for me.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. No, I get it. I
Yeah.
actually, my answer would be the same. My son, Miles, is 18, and he's definitely my hero. He's on the spectrum. He's got special needs. He has a long arm on his 15th chromosome, and he has to work extra hard to get to places that, a lot of people just have. Right. And then he has a stepsister that's on the other side. She's, so I understand that juxtaposition. So
it's a little, it's challenging as a parent because there might be some similarities, and we really have to make the distinction between parenting one child versus the other. And that could be true of any neurotypical child, but it's more pronounced when you have children on whatever spectrum they're on. And even if it's just, even if it's a physical ailment, it really is the best example of, when you see a child with autism, you see one child with autism. Nothing looks the same. And the same thing goes for any child. It's just more pronounced.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think the big thing for being a parent in this is the level of loneliness. I know that's been my thing.
Absolutely.
Just feeling absolutely alone, even with those around you that say they understand or want to understand. There's just no way. Yeah.
Well, I'm here. So reach out anytime you need it, because I get it.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I get it.
No,
I get it. And so I started going to organizations when my oldest was young, and for support. And so I really got myself involved in a lot of organizations and advocating. And I was very active in the schools because I had to be, number one. And, I created a team of doctors and teachers, and I had to fight the school board, and, it was a full-time job. And, sadly I had to do that with both of them. But I completely understand the isolated feeling that you get, because the ones around you, the parents, the kids, like, they don't understand how a birthday party or a soccer game is just not in your wheelhouse necessarily. So
Yeah, I had to get to
that's
that
tough.
point with
Yeah.
gatherings where it was like no one would understand, but it's like
Right.
I tried for years and years and years to just go along like the nuclear
Yep.
kind of existence, but it's just hard, and it's hard because of what it does to your child. And if they have sensory
Yeah.
issues and they don't get it and they think, oh, well,
Oh,
it's
absolutely.
no big deal. It's like, that's the big thing. Oh, it's no big deal. We understand. No, you
Right.
don't. You have no
Right.
idea.
No,
And,
you have no
and,
idea. No
and
idea.
you
Right.
don't even want to come across as being, I tend to be overly nice. It may be one of
Yeah.
my vices, but it's
Absolutely.
still,
Yep.
the older I've gotten, I've literally gotten to a point, I'm 50 now, where it's like,
Yeah.
no, that's it. That's the end of the
Yeah.
story.
Right, exactly. And you don't need to know anything. And
Yep.
so, yeah, I get it. I mean, my child, I'm about to launch her off to college in the fall. And, she walks around with these, noise canceling headphones or AirPods in her ears, because she's developed her sensory issues, which we had no idea what that was, 12, 15 years ago.
Yep.
And she didn't know. But like, she hates to get wet. She can't stand noises. She says she could hear every single noise. We go to a movie at the theater, she needs to wear special headsets so that she could really focus and hone in on that. But nobody would understand that unless they're involved in it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So if you can meet anybody alive on the planet right now and spend some time with them, who would it be?
Mm. It's funny. I know it's so cliche, but God, there's so many people. But I was talking about this the other day on a show, and I think Oprah would be one of the first, because not only is she pretty fantastic and her story is fantastic, but she's met everybody that one of us would have wanted to meet. And that's why I love her show and her podcast. It's because if you want to, talk to this person, this author or this actor or this composer or this scientist or this doctor, she's done it. So that's why I like listening to her and seeing her guests. But more so is because I have a dream of perhaps getting a house with land for women and children and men and animals that all need rescuing for whatever reason. And, there's so much that goes into that. And she's done it with her school. And I remember her saying once that she was so focused on what, what the actual foundation of the school looked like, that she didn't realize that she had to focus on these other things. And, I think someone who's done it, going from A to Z, so to speak, could sit down and teach me that. So it would be for that more than anything. Excuse me.
So, we all have motivations that drive
Yeah.
us through our days. What is the motivator for you? What is the ultimate motivation for you to be who you are, to help others, and to get through the day?
I've been through hell and back again. And I've been to dark places. I was taken to dark places I didn't know existed. And all the while, I was still raising my two special needs children. And somehow I survived. And I realized I survived for a reason. And the reason is because everyone has some sort of a dark spot in their head or in their life. And there's a gradient, just like a spectrum of autism, there's a spectrum of trauma. And I don't want anyone to feel alone when they're in that situation, or they're trying to get out of it, or they've come out of it. And my goal is to have, to let people know that there is a support system out there. And even if it's just me. And I know I survived for that. And so that gets me up every day.
So, you've gone through quite a bit in your life, and I'm curious, if you were to have a dream tonight, run into a 20-year-old version of yourself, and you could give that version of you a piece of advice based on the life you've led, the wisdom you've gained, what would you tell your younger version?
It's all going to be okay. You're more powerful than you realize. What you look like is not as important as who you are inside. And the infamous, Tony Robbins slogan, all you need is within you now.
The one thing too that always pulls us through, and it happened in COVID especially, was
Hmm.
that people had access to arts, whether it was TV, film, visual arts, books. What was the art for you growing up? A book or something that really motivated you, or you might return to now?
Well, I read a lot. My daughter and I tend to read three books at a time. I My father and I used to sit down and he would play the piano and I would sing. I took piano lessons, I took guitar lessons, singing lessons, all of that. There was always music going on in the house. Um, so that's got me through. Actually, during COVID, I realized that right brain was really I started to enhance it. I went back to that because my left brain, the science, the healthcare, I couldn't do. And I really didn't want to approach all of that. I stopped listening to the COVID stuff because I knew that that wouldn't help me any with the anxiety. So I went to the right side. So I started doing more things that were creative. Um, and and that really helped me. Music was huge for me throughout this entire episode that I had, so to speak, with what I went through. And music has always been musical theater is huge in my home. My daughter did that for many, many years. And we just went to our last show in our 10-year span, because we've been going every month for 10 years. And I just realized, like, that's just the biggest, thing that's been for me as a family. And I've gotten that from my family of origin, from my parents. I was actually named after the song, Michelle.
Oh, cool. Very
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
So, of all of the people that you've helped and worked with in your life, what's been one of the best success stories?
I would say one of the best success stories is, there's a few of them, but there was one gal that I went to the hospital with one night. She had called me, and she has three children, and her husband um, had hurt her and threatened her children. And she ended up in the hospital, and I met her there. And unfortunately, people don't take others seriously when they're in that state of anxiety, or and this could happen even in children in school, or being bullied, is nobody really listens because all they see is somebody who maybe be out of their own character, and a heightened sense of who they are in any way. So I advocated for her in the hospital, and then I spoke to the police officer for her, and he didn't even believe her because of how she was acting. And so I spoke with him, and I was able to do that. And then eventually we got her out and on her own with her three kids. And, you know, there's, and she's very religious, and, we could talk about divine intervention or whatever it is, but all the stars aligned and it worked out. And we still stay in touch, and she's doing really well, and her kids are doing great, and she got the support that she needed, because there's a lot of support out there. And that's one of my very proud moments, but I don't see it as my doing. I see it as somebody's, it's being worked through me.
So, everyone out there has a perception of you, your family, your friends, clients, colleagues, but ultimately you lead the march. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Well, I know who I am. There's no question about it. I'm pure love. I'm pure love and giving. And, I was we all were, but I know what I was created for. I was told by one of my friends, who's you've actually interviewed, I believe, it took over 4,000 people to create me, as it did you, as it did the people that are listening. And in that regard, I know what I was created for. And it's to be love and to give love. And that's it. And that's what I do every day, whether it's my own kids, my family, the stranger on the street. The guy collecting the garbage to wish him a happy day, to give him a cold bottle of water because it's hot outside. And that's it, because my goal is to put a smile on someone's face and let them know that they're seen, that they're valued, and that they're loved. That's who I am.
So I'm curious, you're on a platform that, well, I guess I'm going to preface this with this. I've always said that podcasting tends to be one of the best modern avenues of therapy for all of us, because in this
absolutely.
situation, we get to understand each other and put our stories out there. But I'm curious for you, as someone that technically wants to stay at a place where you're not going to be revealed, but you still want to get your story out. How do you quantify what you're doing as far as getting publicity, encourage in that fine line? What's your philosophy and methodology of doing this for someone that doesn't necessarily want to be found?
It's a challenge. It really is. And I'm working that out. So I can speak with someone, because a lot of people, the story is, my story is domestic violence and being sex trafficked, and surviving that. And having gone through that, I realize I can do anything. So my goal is to help people in whatever capacity that I can at the moment. Perhaps one day I will come out. That's my goal, but I need to make sure that it's safe for myself and for my kids. So if that means somebody going on my website and reaching out to me, and my reaching back out to them in this regard, I can speak to them as long as I want to. I can meet up with them. I can give them what I went through and how I got through that, and just be an ear and whatever it needs. So, it's, at the moment, this is where I'm at. And I wasn't going to pause this because I have to stay a secret. I wasn't going to do that.
And I think that's great. I think there's a lot of courage that goes into that. I think the being a human being and marching on and going through difficult things, which we all have, I know that there's been a number of things that that we've all had to go through and that have transpired that we have to rise above. So I guess the next most logical question to this is to continue that conversation with anyone that hears this, that wants to reach out to you. Where can they go? How can they get in touch? What's the best way?
So going onto my website is the best way. It's fromthefloortothedoor.com. And they can reach out to me there. They can contact me on there. I also have a blog, so I've been writing pieces that will be in a book one day. I actually have 2 books that I'm working on, and that's the best way to stay in contact. And not only I said it the other day, not only for them to reach out to me so I can reach out to them, and it doesn't matter what hour, because I know what it feels like at 2:00 in the morning, and you wake up and you're by yourself and you feel alone, or you have anxiety about things. I know what that feels like, and I've been there, so I know how to get through it also. But it's also to keep me accountable and to keep me encouraged as well, because we as human beings need that. We need that connection. And like we talked about, it can be very isolating. And, it really can. Although this world is so, so big now. And I think our kids, the younger generation, has shown us how big it is, how they can connect to people, and that's what I love about social media. The other side of it, we all know, is just not great. But they can reach out to me on my website.
So, Michelle, thank you for opening up. Thanks for taking time out and putting your story out there and connecting. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. And I appreciate you. Thank you. Keep doing what you're doing.
Thanks for tuning in to another famous interview with Joe Dimino, where we cover the world of art, literature, business, spirituality, music, and more from around the globe. If you want to hear more interviews, visit the Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino channel on YouTube. You can find us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Thanks again for listening, and until next time.